It's so hard to pin down what I do because I do so many different things, like from the rehab side of things. Most people think of like a chiropractor, a guy's coming in for ACL rehabs like day one post-op. And on the nutrition side of things, like I got a big interest in that, especially on concussion care, like brain health, all that stuff. So I guess like in the simplest form is I'm a problem solver.
Dr. Dylan Seeley, chiropractor, performance coach, and all-around movement expert who's worked with athletes from the NFL to the Olympic stage.
He's known for blending rehab, strength, and data-driven training to help people perform at their best.
What's a short version of how your path in rugby led you to the world of neurology, vision training, concussion recovery?
My first true taste of a concussion when I got my head on the wrong side of a tackle and just took a knee square to the temple. We didn't have like head injury assessments. And I think that's kind of what led me down the rabbit hole of vision training and all this other stuff.
What's that earliest moment that you can remember realizing that your body and brain could be trained beyond just sports skill?
I realized like the brain's a muscle. Like we can rewire things with neuroplasticity.
What do you find that most athletes misunderstand about making their eyes faster? Welcome to Evolving Athletes Podcast with Coach Vinny Malts. I'm really excited for today's conversation because this one came through a great connection. Justin Kavanaugh. He anytime Cav says, "Hey, you need to meet this person," I know it's going to be worth it. I've heard so much about the depth of your work, especially around concussion recovery, vision training, and helping athletes reach a different level of awareness. And looking forward to learning more about you and your journey. So, Dylan, thanks for being on here, brother.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I was super stoked to be talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That should be a good one, man. Before we dive in and start getting specifics and getting after it, I'd love for our listeners to hear, it directly from you of, when someone asks you what you do, how do you explain it in your own words?
I guess the simplest way to put it is just witchcraft, honestly. It's so hard to pin down what I do because I do so many different things, like from the rehab side of things. Most people think of like a chiropractor and they just think, crack your back, crack your neck.
Right.
Well, I got guys coming in for ACL rehabs like day one post-op. So I do that. I mean, on the nutrition side of things, like I got a big interest in that, especially on concussion care, like brain health, all that stuff. I mean, I'm diving down every little rabbit hole. And because mostly what I've noticed is that it's all connected, right? Like you start learning a little bit about something and then you realize like, oh, this can actually help me in my game over here. And you just keep accumulating those little things, whether it's books or articles or, people. You just continue that learning process and you realize everything's connected and then you just kind of blend it into what you do. So I guess like in the simplest form is I'm a problem solver. Yeah. Guys come to me with, an issue, whether it be like physical, mental, whatever it is. And my job is to kind of dive deep, find out what's actually going on and then fix that for them.
Yeah, I love it. I love how, you were able to explore that energy, right? And figure that out for yourself as an evolving athlete of going through it. Cause that's the whole journey and that's the stuff, we'll dive into, but it's cool to think about how sport has, drove you into that world. So that'd be fun to dig into. If we rewound right to your first real love for sport, where would we find you and what would you be doing?
You would probably find me at the T-ball field. So I grew up playing baseball.
Nice.
I lived literally right next to the baseball field. So it was the easiest thing for me to pick up. So I grew up playing baseball, absolutely loved it. Cousin, was a draft pick as well. So it kind of ran in the family.
Yeah.
So it was just a common thing to kind of pick up. And what I actually got really good at, I didn't even start really playing it officially until I was probably 18, 19.
Yeah.
So when like most people ask about sports, like for me, it was rugby actually. So I grew up playing baseball, loved playing baseball, but baseball season always coincided with rugby because they're usually played in the spring. And my best friend, his dad is from Samoa and rugby is obviously a massive part of their culture. So like I grew up familiar with the concept of rugby and just never got to play it. Well, when I finally kind of hung up the boots of playing baseball, I've got to dive back into playing, rugby officially. And I just absolutely fell in love with it because it's hard to find a sport where, for me, I think boredom plays a big role into what I do and how I got to be successful is I can't sit still. I always want to do something and learn something. And this is one of the few sports where you're on the field the entire time. It's just so fast paced. Like there's a lot of cerebral aspects to it. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's, super similar to hockey in that regard where, you're flying somewhere doing something and then you might take a quick, breather and then you're right back out doing something, you're playing offense, you're playing defense. And I found like that was just awesome for me. And so my passion originally was baseball, but then it kind of transitioned later on as I got older and I realized I actually really like being violent and I'm good at it. So I love violence and I love hitting people. And that was probably what drew me even closer to that sport. Like it's fun.
I love it. A self-aware man. I feel you on that. And yeah, to your point, right? That's what I loved about hockey too, right, is that it's so intense. It's the intensity. That's what it is. The natural expression of my energy needed that of like, I need something crazy intense to the point of exhaustion. And to your point, it's like always moving, right? It's just, it's how naturally built. That's how it goes. What's the short version of how your path in rugby led you to the world of neurology, vision training, concussion recovery? Talk about that part a little bit.
I think it got me down the rabbit hole just because I racked up so many concussions throughout my playing career. Because I think I had like my first true taste of a concussion when I got my head on the wrong side of a tackle and just took a knee square to the temple. And I looked like a newborn deer getting up. And this was during the days where you just couldn't sub out during rugby and we didn't have like head injury assessments. So for those that don't know, like within rugby, it's not like you can just call a timeout and then just switch out somebody on the field. So if you're on the field, it's very similar to soccer. Like you're there the entire time. And if you go off, you stay off. And then back when I was playing, which makes it seem like it was forever ago, it's really not. There wasn't a head injury assessment at the time. So if you got hit in the head, it's not like we could just pull you off and look at you. So you either took yourself off or you played through. And I remember my first big one, I got absolutely smoked on a late hit. I mean, it was pretty bad when you watch the film back. And I laid there, I blacked out. Apparently a fight broke out over top of me because of the cheap shot. I'm getting stepped on. I managed like a few seconds later to kind of come to it. I try and get away from the scuffle. I look like a newborn deer getting up, just falling all over the place. And then I managed to get back, like play reset. I managed to get back into the defensive line and then make a tackle like 10 seconds later. And I go, this probably isn't the healthiest thing for my brain.
Right.
But going through a lot of that stuff, each hit to the head, the game kind of speeds up. You slow down and the game gets faster. And I think that's kind of what led me down the rabbit hole of, vision training and all this other stuff was before I could make a read and it was super simple. I mean, I could catch the ball in my hands, turn my head, see what's going on, read the defender in front of me and the defender to my side and set up the player next to me. Well, now but I get a ball and this person's maybe, 5-6 meters away from me and I feel like they're a meter up in my face. So everything felt like it was moving so fast that I couldn't keep up with it. And I'm making stupid plays when we watch the film back that I would never make consciously. And I think at that moment I knew something's wrong. I said, I feel like, something's off with me, and I go in and get my eyes checked by the doctor and team doc's like, oh, your eyes are fine. 20/20, you're all good. And I was like, something's off here. All right. So track that further down the road. I kind of finished the career and then I get into like the hobby of shooting guns as every American does. So for me, shooting guns, I am all over the place. Like I'm way off target. I'm like, this makes no sense whatsoever. And at the time I had a patient who was a neuro-ophthalmologist and she took a look at my eyes and put me through this random testing that not every eye doctor does. And she goes, yeah, you're pretty screwed up. She goes, your eyes aren't tracking well. They can't come in together well. You can't fuse images together well. She was like, no wonder it was hard to play towards the end of your career.
Wow.
And at that moment, I was like, oh, there's a whole different side of vision, that, I could have probably played much longer throughout my career if I fixed some of this stuff up. So that's what got me super interested down the rabbit hole. And the people that I learned the vision stuff from, they had an offshoot of that company was getting into like the neuro side of things. Like how does, the crystals in your ear, how does that affect like how you're, distributing your weight, how does that change how you're balancing on your skate on the ice? Or can you get deeper into this hip, or are you just not sensing it because this half of your, your brain's not working the way that we want it to? So all these weird little intricacies kind of just spurred from the fact that I sucked at shooting guns. I still suck, but not as bad.
Right.
But that was the fascinating thing for me. And I think a lot of athletes tend to pick this up later in their career. And it's like, this should be first line, that you should learn as soon as you get into the league. Because if you can slow the game down, I mean, decision-making is so much easier, but you also protect yourself. Because it was the University of Cincinnati. That's who was one of my mentors, was the neuroscientist over there, Dr. Clark. And he actually did research with the football team and found if they implemented, a bunch of vision training before the season, they took their average concussion rate from 13 a year down to 2 on average.
Wow.
No extra neck strengthening, nothing like crazy out of the ordinary. All they did was train their eyes. That was it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's what I love, the evolution of an athlete, of how we're always so curious. And even just, hey, I'm going to go shoot some guns, is boom, rewinding me and going like, oh, wait, I'm learning something else about myself. The engagement, the physical act of engagement, it's incredible how much I think every high-performing athlete has that kind of story of, when I did this, I noticed this part, and wow, it connected, and oh my God, if I understood this back then, wow, what a difference it would have made. So it's crazy, right, in that context, that it led you down something that I know now so many, performance coaches that are legit, right, that understand the visual, right? The vestibular, like you're hearing all these new kind of ways of like, wow, like, man, we haven't even tapped into it. So I'm excited to dive further down into some of that stuff with you today. Cause it's massive. And I know a lot of our listeners, it's a matter, especially the athletes, getting ahead of that and understanding that's the part where there's just not enough education out there from real world-class type of coaches. So it'll be fun to dive into it. So it's a great picture painting there. What I would do, what I want to rewind a little bit on is the personal side of your journey, right? And what shaped you before we got into all the titles, the clinic, the certifications, all the fun stuff, right? And so you've been an athlete and you're a patient, right, with 6 concussions. That has a little bit of a history there. And now you're a guide for others. When you think about what's that earliest moment that you can remember realizing that your body and brain could be trained beyond just sport skill?
I think it really clicked for me going through some of the courses, honestly, because going back into like the shooting the gun stuff and all that thing. So when I kind of got a deep interest in that, I picked up a book and it was called See to Play, through the eyes of the elite athletes.
I think I've got that one.
And I'm reading through this book and I'm realizing I have every single symptom that this book can talk about. And I realized, and then they gave exercises in the book, and that's kind of what kickstarted some of this stuff. And that's what got me, to talk to the neuro-ophthalmologist. And I realized, like, the brain's a muscle, like in a sense, like we can rewire things with neuroplasticity. Because coming early on in my career, like I was just treating pain. I was treating low backs, or I was treating a knee or shoulder or whatever. And a lot of that stuff is just rewiring how people think about their pain and give them different movement strategies. And I was like, at this moment, it clicks. Like, why can't the brain do the same exact thing? Right? Like our eyes are a muscle. We should be able to, manipulate that too. And so then I think that's when it really clicked and realized like, oh, I can create leverage with this. Like I can, use this from a, sport performance standpoint. Whereas this neuro-ophthalmologist, they're doing this with kids with learning disabilities. Right. So there's so much crossover that the world just doesn't know about. I'm sure like if these neuro-ophthalmologists or neurooptometrists, that do all this vision training, vision sciences, if they just took a step back and talked to an athlete, they would realize that athletes have these same exact symptoms. And so that's where it became super cool for me to blend these different worlds, realizing there's so much overlap between what all of us are studying. It's just no one's really connected the dots.
A true chef. Yeah. I mean, that's the reality, right? It's amazing, right? It's computer science, it's T-learning over I-learning, right? And it's like, there's so much information out there that problems have been solved elsewhere, but it's amazing how the world, we don't recognize like, oh, wow, that's already been solved in a different industry. If you brought that over here, wow, what that could be. And, that's the most greatest minds, right? That's what they're so good at. So I love being able to hear that side of your story. When rugby ended and you think about it from an identity standpoint, how did you personally navigate losing that on-field identity while still finding ways to compete or challenge yourself after going through such an ordeal?
I think that was honestly one of the hardest things. Because at that time I had also, so going into like my last couple of years of my career, I actually broke my back. And, but I had just signed another scholarship to play at a school, so I couldn't tell them, in fear that I would lose my scholarship and not be able to attend school. So I tried playing through that for about a year and a half, and I realized like I just couldn't muscle through it. So not only did I have the concussions racking up, but it was also probably from the fact that my back was locking up and I just couldn't get out of the way of the tackle. And at that moment, I felt like my career was just slipping away anyways. Like I realized I could never play to the level that I knew that I could. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me, just kind of seeing my career fade away and knowing that like these people are trying to help me, but nothing's really sticking. And at that moment, that's where I think a lot of my hunger started with, like, I want to be able to fix like the things that other people couldn't. So I think that was a big thing. And then I kind of transitioned a little bit over into the coaching role. And during that time, I was also rehabbing my back. So it was fun to take a step back and get more cerebral about the game and kind of dive into the coaching aspect a little bit more. And then all at the same time, I was able to fix up my back. Well, I got to a point where my back felt better and I had moved to a new city. And then I get a random text message that says, hey, we have practice. Do you want to come out this time? I have no idea who this person is. And I was like, well, my back's been feeling better. Like, I'm dumb enough. Why not? So I step back out there. I'm playing again. I'm absolutely loving it. And then bad luck happens. Get smoked in the head on a thigh. Get another concussion. And I promised my wife, I said, if I ever get one more, I'm done. And at that point, I think there was really no other outlet for me. And I think that's the biggest struggle for a lot of athletes. There's this is your life. This is all you know. In the moment that's gone, you just have nothing really, to do. And it's like, my wife has tried to talk to me about this. Like, well, why don't you just go and watch the games? And it's like, it's not the same.
It's not the same. No.
I want to be out there. I want to make the plays, and then you get frustrated that you're not there and you can see what's going on and, they're not doing it. And so that's I think a really hard thing for a lot of people. But it's been good because it's allowed me to dive into other avenues, especially around education or shooting guns or finding some new hobbies that I didn't think I would, be interested in. So it's good. I think it's good on that thing, but it's also very hard because I think it took me probably about a year and a half to actually find something that I truly enjoyed. Because for me, it's, it's sports, but your body can't handle the same stuff. And I told my wife, she's asking, why don't we just play some intramural or some rec ball? And it's like, well, if I'm playing, I'm either, playing for such a poor team that it's just beer league, and nothing wrong with that. Like I love playing beer league sports, but it's not scratching the itch. But then if we play a little bit of a higher level, I'm going to want to take it seriously and I'm going to lose my mind if we do not win. And I don't want to be at that, right? And so it's such a hard space to navigate, I think, for a lot of athletes. And that's why it's awesome we got people like you to talk through about that stuff. Because it took me a while to just find that through myself and realize like, maybe I can attack it through education, or maybe I can attack it through, shooting guns, or if I had randomly played the harmonica. So that's been a newfound, interest. So it's good and bad, I would say. It's hard to say, I think,
100%.
Yeah, it's still, because I even had a patient come in the other day. They finished up their baseball career and they go, what do I do?
Right.
I go, brother, I don't know. It took me a year and a half of sitting on my ass to find something, that I really enjoyed. And there's no easy path. There's no right answer because you got to find what makes you tick inside, that really fills that bucket.
Yep. Amen to that. Yeah. It's like, I remember, to your point, when I was done the playing days and I retired, I had back injury. And so I was like, kind of like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to get into coaching. And so I felt this like, oh, I feel like I'm playing again, right? When I started coaching, it's like, man, I feel like I'm back in it again. Well, then lo and behold, a couple of years later, okay, you're coaching, and a couple of years later, here comes during the playoffs. I'd get into this deep depression and I would just feel like, oh my God. So it'd be like, that May, June, right? April, May, June, like, it's just like, oh, I want to be out there. I want to be playing again. And to your point, it happened 3 years in a row where it just kept going and hitting me. And every year it got deeper and worse, the depression, dark thoughts. And I'm just like, I can't live with this shit. Like I can't live my life like this. And that's actually then what ironically drove me into mindset performance, right? I started working with Bryant, Carrie Cameron, Dr. Mike T. Nelson, he was a part of the crew. And, I went through this basically mindset performance course, and that's where it kind of like lifted off. And now I was able to express the game with something I was really passionate about solving, was the mindset of like, man, like when you're done. And a lot of it, like you said, was really pushed off of when you're done playing, how do I scratch that itch anymore? Like, how do I still go into reality? Like I always laugh about corporate where they love their athletes. Oh, we love the character of athletes. We want to hire them. I'm like, be careful what you wish for. Like you're trying to take a wild animal and cage it in your little bin because you think they're good character. But the reality is you take them off the field and you don't have a culture that is competitive, that recreates that feel. They're not going to last. Like it's just going to feel like this sucks. I'm out of here.
Exactly. I had that exact conversation with, I think I mentioned to you prior, but Curtis Brackenberry. So he played in the NHL back in the day. He was an enforcer. And he explained this to me because he ran into this problem as well. He goes, what served me on the ice did not serve me in my personal life or anything outside of it. He said, being violent, people loved it. It's why they showed up. That's why I got paid. And it's what I did well. I can't take that home. Right. And that same thing, like the same stuff that made me good at rugby. Like, yeah, you can talk about the mental aspect of the things, but like being violent and being aggressive with my teammates, holding them to the standard, and the same thing. Like, I'm sure we've all fought teammates. You can't do that in corporate. Oh, you can, but HR is going to call you. But
5 minutes for fighting.
So that's a big thing. And I think that's a thing, same thing a lot of people struggle with once they get outside the sport. What made you successful in the sport is not going to necessarily carry over in your home life. And I think that's also a tough thing that a lot of people don't realize.
Right. Exactly. Well, that kind of brings up also like in those first months, right after you're done playing and okay, it's official. What was the most surprising thing besides that part of like to you that you learned about yourself when the sport was no longer the center of your life?
Yeah. I mean, man, that was a hard time in my life. I think I just tried to replace it with other stuff, but it wasn't making me happy. I think I was like, well, if I just work more, then I can't think about it, So it's like, well, I'm just going to pick up more hours in the office.
Exactly.
And then I was like, well, now I can teach. So that's going to, bring more. So I got to the point where I was working like 80, 90-hour work weeks. And I was great because I wasn't thinking about playing anymore, but I was so miserable and running myself down into the ground that as soon as that semester was over, I had to confront my reality. And I hated it. I was so miserable in everything that I did. And like you said, it's like you just fall into this funk, this depression, and you just feel like shit. And, and it's like I can take a healthy approach or I can have a detrimental approach where I just kind of, like a lot of guys fall into, drinking or doing stuff by the wayside because it just numbs it and you don't have to deal with it. And I think we all have, we all fall into some of that, at some point. It's just, do you have people to pull you out of it? And I think that's the other thing that a lot of people struggle with is like once they're out of the game, it's like they feel like they've lost all their buddies along the way or the culture because they're not playing anymore. And it's like, once you retire, it's like, how often do you connect with the guys that are also retired?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe on like the alumni like golf trip, and that's about it.
Right, exactly. And that's just like a pure gong show because everybody's like, energy. We don't spread it out. We're here for one weekend. Go.
Exactly.
And that's when real trouble can happen.
Yeah. So that's I think a tough thing. Like, and it's good because it rejuvenates the guys. It gets everybody together. But it's like the same thing as going to a funeral. Oh, we should all go see each other more. Like. And you just leave it at that, and then it never happens until something happens again.
Exactly. Well, that's the one thing that we get so good at as you gain the wisdom as a high performing athlete is you eventually start to figure out, when you're younger, you think it's about doing more skills and more things, right? As opposed to, well, no, now that I understand I have the wisdom of the game, it's more about, okay, how do I just play more consistently at what I know already works? And so because of that wisdom, you create sustainability in your thought process, in your spiritual process, emotional, all these different things. But when we're younger, we're still trying to find that. And so to your point, when we're not scratching that itch or when we feel like we've gotten something taken away from us at an age where we didn't gain that maturity, we didn't gain that wisdom yet. Now we're kind of still battling with, man, I didn't finish, what I started kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really hard for a lot of players of, you start to look back on what that reality is for you. And not only is it injuries, it can end up pulling you out, but then it's just the luck of the draw of the people that you're surrounded by, the organizations, the mentorship, the leadership, and what that does to you, right? That it's amazing how much people don't realize in the pro realm, especially how much luck is involved with some talented human beings where it truly is like right place, right time kind of thing, as opposed to, well, it was a talent thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially going back to your point of, feeling like you've been robbed of your career. I think a lot of like guys fall into that, and it just becomes, it's almost like stages of grief. Like it becomes like anger and all these other things, except, and then eventually you get to acceptance. Yeah. But I think that's one of the biggest, issues, especially, coming off of an injury, whether it's, you got injured from doing something stupid yourself or from something else happened to you. Like we even have this data with concussions. Your concussion symptoms last longer if you feel like you didn't deserve that concussion in the first place. Like say you got cheap shotted in a game, right? Or say you were in a car accident and someone rear-ended you, and you're, if you feel like you're not at fault, your symptoms can prolong.
Wow.
Right. And that just goes to show the mental aspect of that, right? It's mental that manifests as physical, right? They're not separate. They're the same thing, right? And we try and classify them and say, block your, the mental aspect side of things and just power through. And it's like, it doesn't work like that in real life.
Wow. You just took me back on a concussion I had. I'm like, well, now that makes sense. That's crazy. Well, when you look back on your concussion history, right, what do you feel was that turning point when you realized, the recovery aspect had to go beyond protocol and into rebuilding how the brain processes information? Because I think that's one of the most fascinating roads you've gone down.
I think like it really clicked when, I took like the slightest knock to the head, like something that usually wouldn't bother me. And it wrecked me for probably like 2 weeks. Like I had symptoms for it. Right. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And then same thing, you get back into this processing speed. Like I was just slowing down on so many things like that. It wasn't making sense. My decision-making was getting so poor. Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's no longer a physical thing. Like it's a mental thing. And like, how do I train this mental aspect? And then this is where, like, if you go down different avenues of learning about different things, you can kind of connect the dots. And then, so I actually got a big interest in endurance training, right? Because most of the sports that I played growing up, they're all like fast. You play like football, baseball, whatever. It's all fast twitch. There's hardly any cardio. My first bit of cardio was like actually transitioning into rugby. And I hated it for the longest time. And then I actually got to enjoy it. Well, if you look into cardio, there's this big concept of at what point does your body start to shut down? Is it the mind or is it the body? Right. And then Tim Noakes comes along and brings about this central governor theory. Like, we're not a machine. Ultimately, our mind is what puts a cap on us just running our body into the ground. Like, how can I, take the throttle off this central governor? How can I, get past this? And it could just be doing something extremely mundane. So there's some super interesting research out there where all they wanted to do with people is just put them through essentially go, no go testing. So if I flash an arrow that points left on the screen, you got to click on the right arrow, right? Yep. So we're just always doing the opposite. So you have to stay actively thinking, right? And then the moment like you get it wrong, like it's going to flash and alert you big time and make a bunch of sounds to bring your attention back into it. Well, they got to the point where they were having people just hop on a bike and get up to like half an hour sessions of doing this. And like the rating that people had was some people were getting absolutely fried within 5 minutes and other people were going half an hour, and still hanging on pretty strong. And this was just show like that they were more mentally resilient to handle some of this stuff. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I can train my brain to handle stress greater. Right. And then I got into, you can actually train your eyes after I read that book. I'm like, all right, well, let's start doing some of the vision training stuff. And dude, the first time I did vision training, I think I went home afterwards and took a 4-hour nap. Because I had no idea. Yeah. I had no idea like how intensive it is on the brain. Right. And I made that mistake too with athletes early on in the career. And they're like, oh, I was wiped out for the rest of the day. And like, it's crazy how taxing it is on your brain, because you're forcing, like you're revealing all the compensations. Like, a lot of people don't realize it. Like, you might shut an eye off when your heart rate gets high, when you get fatigued. Like, I did an eval on an athlete, and for him, like, once we got his heart rate above like 140, his right eye would shut off. Like, the eye muscle would still move. It looked like he was looking at you and everything else, but like physically he could not see what was going on, like through this eye, through this periphery. So we did just a drill, like where we had him just like hold his breath, walk, just to generate a higher fatigue. And then there's glasses that you can put on that like separate out your eyes. So like one lens is red, one lens is green. And then you give them like a piece of paper that has a like corresponding like colors to it. So it might be like a block of red with like black letters in it, and then a block of white with yellow letters. Or each lens will only let you see a certain color. Right. So each eye can only see one thing. So we get his heart rate up, we get him fatigued, we throw these things on, and he goes, and I'm maybe 10 yards away from him. And he goes, I can't see any of the white like letters, like the yellow letters in the white blocks. And I go, oh shit. Right. But when I tested him earlier, when he was fresh, no heart rate, no pressure, he could see everything all the way up to like 50 feet away. Like, it was a breeze for him. Right. So I go back and watch his film. Every poor pass he had ever made off his right-hand side.
Wow.
Right. So it's super cool when you can start to reveal some of this stuff and go, oh, I can actually train this up. Right. So then you start doing some of these drills, like trying to, do I stress them physically? Do I stress them mentally? Do I, stress them with the vision? So you can play around with all these cool little aspects, and you're just chasing different edges. Right. Because people just think like, oh, if I want to be, stay sharp on the ice, I just need to have great cardio. And that's true, like to a point. Right. You're going to bury yourself into the ground doing cardio, and your legs are going to be too heavy to skate when it actually matters. Right. You're not going to be fresh when you need it. So then how can I chase that edge? Well, I can chase that through vision training. I can chase that through mental aspects. I can chase that all these different routes. And so that's where the fun comes into play of things.
Yeah, exactly.
That's such an underappreciated aspect that a lot of people just leave out.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's funny. That's one of the things of what I loved about, our perspective on mindset performance is it's a recipe. There's ingredients that you put together, right? So we worked them through these 5 different ingredients initially as our framework. But off that framework, the whole point is I teach the players, and we talk about how, think of it like your favorite sandwich, and they say whatever that is, right? So, whatever that might be. What's your favorite sandwich? What's yours?
I'm an Italian sub guy for sure.
Oh, love it, right? So what's on your Italian sub? What's on the Italian sub?
So like we're looking at mortadella, capicola, pepperoni, salami, all the good stuff, a little vinaigrette, little banana peppers, a little jalapeno. I'm a big spice guy. So
love it, right? And a good bread, right?
Yeah, good. Gotta have a good bread.
Beautiful, right? Now that's the 8 ingredients, right? So that's when that comes together, right? If you're missing one of them, is it kind of like not the same?
Yeah, no, it's never
right. The same idea, right? And is there a place where like, oh my God, they make the Italian that's like, oh my God, there is unbelievable.
Oh yeah, man, I gotta have it at Santini's every time.
There you go. Right. So that's the part that's so cool about at the high performing world is exactly your point of there's these ingredients that. Yeah, hey, my Italian sub, and I've got the 8 ingredients. And so when players understand their uniqueness of, right, everyone has their unique makeup where it just suits your taste buds, right? Like I love buffalo chicken, right? But it's like, but there's a taste bud, there's a way your body naturally likes to take things in. But all those ingredients, that's the good stuff. But to your point, yeah, but then there's this one spot that's like, oh my God, man, theirs is unbelievable. And that's what we teach our players all the time from a mindset perspective is you have ingredients, but then do you know how to either A, go get the ingredients yourself, go to that place that makes the best one that you know, and can you find out from them, hey, can you teach me or tell me what the recipe is so I can bring that with me on the road? Or you make it hard on yourself and you go, all right, I'm going to have to either go drive to you or have you send it to me wherever I am during the season and all that stuff. But it makes it way more complex. But that's a choice that you have. But somewhere out there, is this unique identity to what you have. So I love how you explain that of where that's the point of performance is that you start to add these other layers in and it's like, wow, I don't have to work as hard at my cardio in one way or my vision another way. You start to bring these elements together that are real elements that actually, when you put them together, wow, it makes an unbelievable sandwich for you. Like for your performance, it's incredible how it changes everything because you don't need as much as people think of one or the other, right? That's a tendency a lot of times with high performers is, I want to be unbelievable at everything. I want the best ingredient for everything. And it's like, I forget what book it was I've read, but they talked about how it's like taking the best parts from all the best cars. It doesn't work that way. Like you can't go taking the best and then put them together and go, "Ooh, I got the best car."
Yeah, I had a coach who just explained it so well. If you look like at international rugby, like one of the most successful teams in the world is the All Blacks, right? One of the highest winning percentages. And if you look at the style of play, it's actually like very simple, very straightforward. It's just we do the basics and you do them extremely well.
Exactly.
Now, if you look at like somebody, like you said, just bringing in all the best parts of this car, that's French rugby, call it champagne rugby, right?
Yeah.
So every once in a while, they might get lucky and just catch a team off guard and like just beat them. And you're like, how the hell does that happen?
Right.
But when it doesn't come together, it's not pretty, right?
Exactly.
And so that's what my coach hammered into us. He's like, we're not going to do a bunch of fancy drills. He was like, we're just going to do the basics and execute them so perfectly well that it looks fancy, right? But you're just doing the simplest of things just over and over and over. And that's what the best high performers just do. There's nothing like fancy about it, right? There's nothing fancy about stick work. It's the same for everybody. There's nothing fancy about like doing a Wingate test on a bike. You're just pedaling. We all do the same shit, right? So there's nothing. The guys are trying to chase these random edges. It's like, just focus on the simple stuff first. Once we start to nail that down, then we can play around with some crazy stuff. But a lot of it's just the basics that we just gloss over because we think we don't need it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the beautiful irony of high performance is we get so caught up in thinking like the shiny object of like, oh my God, if we just make it more, better, beautiful. And then the reality is, no, it just become unbelievable at the fundamentals. There's just fundamental principles that exist in anything that you do. If you can get to those, right? First principle thinking, if you get to those, the rest becomes easy. Then you can add on additions later on if you want, but the fundamentals, the core elements, that's amazing how hard that is for the brain, especially when you're younger coming up, to accept that that's the reality. Like just become unreal. Like Kobe Bryant, right? They talked about it for years. 80% of the work he did, always fundamentals. But when you're young, it's so hard to like take that in and say, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool to do the Michigan, or wouldn't it be cool to do some kind of crazy move?
Yeah. And I think it's honestly, it just pisses people off when they realize, oh, it is that simple. I just got to do the basics. But then they don't want to take responsibility, because if it is that simple and I didn't do it, then it's on me that I didn't get to where I want to be. It's so much easier to blame an external.
Bingo. No, nailed it. And what I love is, you've had such a rare combination of the experiences. I'd love to kind of go into a little bit of like the mental side we talked about there was, you're competing at a high level, you recover from serious injuries, now coaching, treating, right, other athletes. I want to talk about how those skills and lessons have transferred, from the field into your professional life, especially in the way that you work with the athletes, with both the concussion recovery and the vision performance. When you think of from your years on the rugby pitch of like, what's that one mental skill you didn't realize would become crucial in the clinic? Like as you kind of take it from there, field to office kind of thing.
Thinking, I guess, in like an abstracts, like I kind of explain it as like the multiverse. Like if you're a big comic book guy, like
love it. Yeah.
So like if I do this, what are the potential outcomes? And then what are the potential outcomes off of those outcomes? So like in rugby, like if you're always trying to set up plays on top of each other, so you're always thinking like a couple steps ahead at a time. Right. And same thing like in the clinic. Well, if I do this, then here's a potential outcome that can happen. What are the potential downsides of that? And then what's the upside to that? Does the upside outweigh the downsides? And then if I do get the downside, how do I correct that? Right. So you're almost thinking like in all these different abstracts. And I think that's been the biggest carryover that I've noticed is like, I'm able to kind of like step back and not go algorithmic thinking, which is like what everybody like wants or like is the easiest thing to do that everybody's taught. Like if A, then B. Humans are complex. It's not that simple. So it really just comes down to pattern recognition over time, right? So you need reps, like whether it's on the field, on the ice, like, or in the clinic, like you have to get reps in to see enough patterns to recognize if I do this, then this happens, right? Because then I know how to plan off of that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So that I would say that's probably the biggest carryover I've had, like on the clinic side of things.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. Yeah, it's a linear versus nonlinear, right? That's another way that kind of in our language, like we'll talk about, is like there's so many of nonlinear things that actually impact what's going on with you, right? Especially in the pro environment, the politics. This guy's signing a contract, like there's so many things that like you don't even think about. And that's the idea, is like when you can start to wrap your head around all the dynamics, to your point, it's amazing how much it just relaxes the brain. But that's the challenge, right? When you're young, it's like, it can't be like that. It's like you start to figure out as you get older, oh yeah, it is like that.
And it's such a funny thing because like we're always taught everything is linear, right? For the most part, like growing up, if you do this, then you get this.
Book, here's how to do it,
Yeah. And it never works like that. Everything is nonlinear. And even to the point of like human movement is like nonlinear, right? Like one of the coolest things studies I've ever seen is if you look at a baby and you just sit them upright and they do their little sway and you map out all the points, it makes a figure 8.
Wow.
But if you just looked at them, you'd be like, that's not making any pattern. Right. It's a non-linear thing. Like if you finally get all the points and map them out and you go, oh, this is it. Same thing. Like I'll put athletes. I actually just had an athlete the other day for the Pens. I was texting. I put him through a cardio protocol and I said, okay, I just want to see your heart rate data. I want to see how you responded to Wingate testing.
Yep.
And I looked at this, and if you look at it like on the grand scheme of things and you try and get a linear relationship on his heart rate, it's not going to happen. You have to use like a nonlinear polynomial regression, and then we can actually like plot it out against a curve and see what's going on. And I go, okay, I can see like your heart rate is lagging, like initially, like you get going, but your heart rate doesn't get going. Your legs do. So you're dipping and then you're playing catch up and then you overshoot. And now where you should be recovering, you're not. Your heart rate's still up there. And so now when we start off like on our next rep, like you're 20 beats higher than where I would really want you to be.
Right.
All right. But we always think, if A, then B, and it doesn't ever work like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's so true. That's what I love about a lot of the visual stuff, right? As you're talking about, from a mental perspective, I know you've described, being sharp between the eyes, right? As a separator in elite performance. Can you tell me about a moment when you saw that skill flip on for an athlete, right? Maybe in a game or training where you knew they'd cross into a different level of awareness through that process?
Yeah. So most recently with one of the baseball players I've been rehabbing. So we've been touching on some of the vision stuff for him lately, and he's got great eyes, got a great bat, phenomenal hitter. And he's always wanting to learn more about his craft. So I gave him a book on hitting biomechanics, and he's going through this book and he's like, I kind of understand some of it, but I kind of don't. They're talking about head position and like how I can pick up, and he hits lefty, but he's like, I struggle to pick up lefties. And I go, okay, we'll dive into this a little bit more. So we're going through a bunch of testing on his eyes, and he just doesn't have, we call it like gaze discipline, like gaze stability. So this eye, and if he's lined up this way, it's not holding out to the periphery. Like holding this here on him, he feels a lot of strain on his eye. Right. And so it's not going to want to hold there. So it's not going to pick things up right away. And then he's going to become heavily reliant upon this eye when it crosses into his vision, and he's going to be late on his swing. All right. So I said, well, okay, there's 2 ways that we can approach this. Like we can either just work a bunch of gaze discipline, keep your head in the same position, or I can give you a little bit of a head tilt, which now changes how your vision works, like how you're picking up the ball. And he was like, oh, I'll try the head tilt. He texted me the next day. He was like, man, I was absolutely crushing it. And
that's crazy.
He was like, it just clicked. He was like, I don't even know how to describe it. It just felt so much easier with everything that I was doing. He was like, I could pick up things, no problem. And he was like, I'm out ahead of the ball now instead of behind the ball.
Wow. That's amazing. And to your point earlier, right, of even nonlinear, of how the body when it just looks a little differently and you position it differently, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's
like
so
it's
cool.
Such a cool skill. Same thing with, especially like picking up pucks like on a redirect, like off the board. I worked with a handful of athletes. It's like, okay, like how can I get more comfortable? Because we always have one side that we like to go to, right? Yep. And the problem is like you get buried into that side. Well, if I got to go the other way, like I can't cross over skate, I can't get my head around, I can't pick it up nearly as easily. So we'll play around with some of those things, and like and then we'll throw in a little bit of a mental aspect. So like I do that with concussion rehab all the time on things like, they're doing a single eye search. I'm trying to fatigue their eye out. They're finding all these numbers on the paper, and then I give them a math equation. They solve the math equation, and whether it's odds or evens determines which way they go to then like pick up where that puck is.
Yep.
And so we just add in mental fatigue. We add in some of the vestibular training, right? And then we just add in like, okay, the basics of stick work and how do I cross over and all these other things. All right. So it's cool that you can use a layered approach onto things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the part that I love from a mental fatigue. Like you said, it's training it, right? Like add that extra layer where it's not just physical action. You just have to think more. Like I think a lot of times with skills coaches, they really focus on recreating the conditions they're big fans of. But the reality is, how do you create, you can recreate the fans, the pressure, the referees, like the opponent. It's just impossible. It's just, those are different dynamics that are happening, right? From just even like an epigenetic signs of like, it's just what it's happening in the cells. They're just completely different in the air versus like that. It's like, well, if you overload the system and think a little bit more and really drain in just a different kind of way, you can at least prepare for some pressure by thinking like that, which I love that style.
And there's actually a really cool research paper. So Andrew Usher, who's a boxing coach, but also a PhD, like exercise physiologist out of Scotland, he's actually studied this phenomenon. So what he's done, there's a thing called near-infrared spectroscopy where you can take a laser and shine it through like essentially a muscle, and you can look at, okay, does the oxygen in my blood cross over into the muscle, and can then the muscle then use the oxygen? And then we can pair it up against a heart rate sensor. So he did different things of just doing pad work where he's holding the pads, calling out combos. He did another thing where they compared it against doing heavy bag work, and throwing heavy combos and looking at there. And then he compared it against sparring rounds. And what he found was that the legs were eating up oxygen during sparring, even though they were moving way less as opposed to pad work and some of the other stuff.
Wow.
And then their heart rate on average was 25 beats higher in sparring, even though they were moving less, right? As opposed to the work rate that the amount of punches they were throwing within pad work and heavy bag work was drastically higher than the amount they were throwing within sparring. What changed? The cognitive load.
Wow.
Right? Because now I just can't like go in there and throw a shitty combo because I'm going to get tagged. Right. So now it's a cat and mouse game. Now I got to think, how do I want to set things up? I got to be smart. I got to pace myself. Like all of these are mental stressors, and the body's not just like some random machine. Everything's connected. So as soon as I add a load here, there's for sure going to be a load on my heart.
Wow. It's fascinating. Yeah. That's the one thing I find interesting with the eyes. Like we talked about this a little bit before of where, what do you find that most athletes misunderstand about making their eyes faster, right? Versus actually using their vision to process more information. Because I know from the visual standpoint, right? You see all of these kinds of like cognitive exercises you can do, but is the processing of the actual information coming together as well? So, what have you seen as a big misunderstanding that could benefit our listeners?
I think the biggest misunderstanding within vision training is just that it's all about the eye movement. And it's like, well, it's great that your eyes can move really fast, but can you actually see what you're doing? Right. And that's the biggest issue, because then that ties into go, no go. Like just as your eyes are moving, I still need you to make the right decision. So like I work a lot with like SWAT teams. And so if they're going through a house and clearing, like I just can't shoot a civilian. Right. So I need to know exactly who like I have eyes on and what's going on. And so that's a super important thing. So like just because your eyes are moving, and darting side to side or coming in with convergence training doesn't really mean a whole lot if you can't actually see what's going on. And so we need to set the foundation for acuity. Like, can I actually see what's going on? And then I can translate that to dynamic acuity, where it's like my eyes are moving or the target is moving or like whatever else. And then we can get into the fun stuff of like, okay, let's track in, because people start with a lot of end range stuff. Like perfect example is convergence work. Like, can I track something in? Can I track a puck into my skates or into the stick or whatever? Right. And people start with that, but that's an end process. It's like the same as starting with like doing a power clean in the gym. Like you first got to learn how to deadlift, and you also need to learn how to front squat before we ever do these things, right? So it's an end product, and I think people just jump to the end product because it's sexy, it's fun, it's cool to see. Like I can put it on Instagram. Like it's not fun sitting there and just covering one eye and trying to tap 1 through 30 on a piece of paper to build up my eye stamina, right? Or then doing some like color contrast work to see like, okay, can I pick out the finer details? Because they don't think it translates. They think it's too far, it's too boring. But it's the same as just setting up like a basic cardio routine or basic skate work. Like you can't go into like fancy, skating or like stick work or whatever until you've actually mastered the basics on just how to stand upright on skates.
Right. Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. Well, and that's fundamentally what's fascinating is, how have you found that with the vision training? Because, a big thing you're always dealing with is, wait, I got to do more stuff. I got to add more training into it. What are ways that maybe athletes aren't thinking about it of like, well, you're already doing this, so you can kind of couple it, or stack it onto this? Like what's a way that you've kind of found that athletes can do that?
Honestly, they have, I always tell my guys, you got so much time throughout the day. Like you have the most awesome job. Like you're practically a toddler. You don't have to do shit most of the day. And then you just got to go to the rink and just, practice for a couple hours and get to go home.
Yeah.
I was like, so you do have a lot of free time. It's just, what do you want to do in your free time? Like, do you want to scroll Instagram the entire time and try and find new tricks, or do you just want to like work on the basics and get better at your craft?
Yeah.
But then we can also stack some of these stressors, right? So like we can do some vision work if we're just doing a little recovery ride on the spin bike in our condo or apartment or whatever, right? When we're in season, or can I like throw in like something in the locker room right before I go out on the skate just to prime my eyes? It takes all of 10 seconds, right? While you're lacing up your skates. Okay, boom. And then I'm gone, right? So just small stuff like that. People think it needs to be like a workout like it is for your body where it's half an hour. And it's like, no, and like this might only take you 2 minutes, because if we do for half an hour, like you're cooked. Like you're probably not taken to the ice because you're so fatigued.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Like even just 2 minutes every day would probably make such a huge difference. Even if it has to be separate, it's just 2 minutes, like do some exercise.
Yeah. And it's such easy stuff. So I just tell people, it's like, put it where you're not going to miss it. Like put it on the refrigerator, right? You're not going to miss that piece of paper every time that you go to open it up, right? If we're doing something like go, no go testing, like on your phone, like put that app, like first thing, like right next to your Instagram. So every time you click on your Instagram, you're going to see that. And eventually you're going to feel guilty enough that you didn't do it. So you'll go and do it.
Right. Exactly.
So it's just making it simple. And I think that's a big thing that's translated into the clinic early on too, because I was learning like a lot of these new drills and I'm doing these new things. And at this time I was working with Gen Pop. And I go, these people have kids that they have to go home and take care of. And they have all this other stuff. Like, they got to realize, like, they're not just going to lay on the ground and do a bunch of drills for 20 minutes. Like, how do I get them to do this upright against the wall and it only take them 5 minutes and they get the same benefit? So that's where I really, like, perfected the craft of, like, what I do is, like, you have to be able to, if you can apply it to Gen Pop, well, then the athlete can definitely do it, because now there's no excuse.
Right,
and
exactly.
So I think that was a very, like, early turning point in my career. It's like, okay, how can I make this as simple as possible so you have no excuse to do it and you can do it every single day?
Yeah, I love that. If for those listening, right, if there was like, and I know I hate always putting it as the one thing because there's always multiple layers, but even in the simplest, most fundamental exercise that a player could do day to day, or an athlete or a coach listening, hey, here's to help the eyes out. What's that one go-to that's like, yeah, do this. This will help.
I think my one go-to is probably like the single eye search, because I think I texted you that one little paper. I had a bunch of numbers in my logo. So you have to go against like color contrast, and then you have to be able to pick out all these things, because it just trains your eye. It's like just going to the gym and training like your muscles during a workout. Like at the end of the day, like you have a bunch of muscles that control your eyes, and sometimes it's just that's the rate limiter. Like as those muscles get tired, your brain gets tired, and then you stop seeing what's directly in front of you. So like another easy way to do that is just a crossword, like a word search. Like we might just cover one eye and then try and go through and do a word search. Other people, I might just have them cover one eye, like you give them an eye patch and I say, just sit outside and just look at what's going on. Because if I block out an eye, this eye now has to get stronger and see everything around me. Right. And it's such an undervalued tool. And we just don't ever think of it that way. But it's like, well, you might have an eye that's dominant. Well, let's just train the other eye that's not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I love about too. Meeting you is like, you definitely, from the conversations we had so far, like inspired me to realize from mindset, mental performance standpoint, because I've known the physical, right? Well, we know, okay, make your skating stronger. You got to work lunges and the usual stuff and a lot. I'm like, right, with the brain, it's like eyes, like you got to strengthen these muscles. Like I use the analogy with players all the time of, well, you're going to do lunges, but you still have to skate, right? Like, yeah, lunges will make your skating better, but you still have to skate. And it's kind of like with the brain too, is like, yeah, no, you still have to think, but your eyes are going to make you a better thinker. Like you're going to see things quicker in that way. So, that's always inspiring, man, to hear you go through that stuff, because it's massive. It's a huge game changer.
And I think I even told you the story about like one of my mentors, because he's extremely good at this too, but he was talking, because he did some consulting back in the day for a team, and the team was saying like, oh, he just needs to get bigger. He's a young prospect, so he just needs to get bigger, faster, stronger. Usually. And he's like, well, that's great, but his decision-making is still poor. If he gets that puck faster, he's now just a bigger, faster, stronger nightmare because he's still not know what to do. So he's going to get there. And now it's going to be more obvious that he doesn't know what to do. Right? And so the team was like, well, we're just going to get him bigger, faster, stronger. 6 months later, he gets a call. Okay, yeah, you were right. Like, what can we do to fix this? And he's like, all right, well, let's look at his decision making. Let's look at the, the IQ for the game. How are his eyes responding? And so they go through that little rabbit hole and they find, okay, like his eyes aren't doing this, so he's not processing this. Like he's not taking in the surroundings, and like his ability to sense when somebody's, over his left shoulder versus right shoulder isn't there. And so they dialed that in, and it's like, oh, he's money now. Like this guy's awesome. And it's like, well, yeah. And we didn't make him work out during that time either. So it wasn't a bigger, faster, stronger problem.
Exactly. And that is such a big challenge, right? Always of like how to put in that time, right? It's because it's like a lot of times leadership, right? It's not that they don't want to help out. It's just they've got so much on their plate. It's the last thing they're thinking about, right? And that kind of, segues into, the next things I'd love to chat with you about is that, there's still a lot, right, that you're being able to do, helping the athletes. And we all know any great coaches, right? It's like you're pouring so much time into it, but with everything that you're pouring in, right, there's a question of how you maintain your own edge and balance, right? There's always, what's interesting as an evolving athlete is how are you taking care of yourself? So, when you think about it from your perspective of how, you go through your day to day, how do you protect your own nervous system when you spend all day fixing others and helping others? What do you do for yourself?
I think that's a super important thing that you bring that up, because I think a lot of us fall by the wayside on that. We get so fixated on helping other people that we neglect ourselves. And then you can't help somebody if you feel like shit. Right? But we don't realize that until we hit that point, and it's far too late.
Coaches, leaders, listen up.
Right? So that's a super big thing. And honestly, like I've inserted myself into the workouts with some of the guys because I find, it's so much easier to ask them to do something if I do it with them. You can't bitch about the cardio I'm going to put you through if I'm going through it and talking shit to you the whole time. Right? Like, I don't want to hear you're tired and it's hot. Like, we work out in a barn. Like, so we have a pole barn that's got a gym in it with 0 AC. So like some days in the summer here, we're cooking. It's like 100 degrees inside that barn. And sometimes there's 0 wind. So that is hot, stale air. People go, well, I'm tired. Okay, that's great. I'm tired too, but I'm still pulling this bar. Like, you better too. Right. So it makes it easier because athlete buy-in is so much better at that point if you're willing to suffer with that. Right. So coaches need to step in and do that every once in a while. Doesn't mean you need to do it all the time, but you need to show them that you're willing to go through the bullshit with them as well. Right. It's such an easy way to create buy-in. But outside of that, how I, take care of myself is like, I practice what I preach on some of this stuff. Like I'll do the breath work. Like, and I, same thing. It's like, oh, I make excuses. Well, I don't have time for this. Well, if I put it right on my nightstand when I first wake up and I put the finger sensor on because it's right next to whatever, like my phone or my alarm clock, well, now I have no excuse. So then I wake up, I take my HRV, I do the breath work, and I get myself a little bit aligned and relaxed. And then I go outside, like I get my, eyes on sunrise, and I spend outside in there, go on a walk a little bit. And then after that, like I come in, I make sure I get my lift in and like during the lunch break. And then after that, I go home and I make sure, like we talked about earlier, like what makes you successful at work isn't necessarily going to work at home. Right. So I need to be able to separate that. So I make sure like when I get home, I park the car, like I'll do some breath work or whatever to kind of chill me out, or I might need to go on a walk or whatever before I step in that house because I need to be a different person.
Yeah.
All right.
Love that.
And then from there, and then you have all the other like weird tools and gadgets that I keep in this office. So it's like, I might just sit in front of the red light and take a nap in front of that thing today. Or I might use whatever, like a PEMF machine, or I might have like a alpha stim that I can clip on my ears that pumps a current through my brain that just gets me to chill out. So it's like, yeah, we can have the external factors, but like you still need the internal drive to want to do those things.
That's it. That's always the big challenge, right? And it's funny, you bring up about being able to jump in and get that buy-in. I had one pro team I was working with that I brought that up of like, hey, I'm going to work out with them in the gym. Oh my God. You want to talk about witchcraft? Or like, I was like Salem witch trial, like, oh my God, and what are you doing? Like, that's no, not here. You're not doing that. But to your point, right, it is a habit stack. It's like, well, not only is it good for them to see that and jump in the foxhole with them, but it's also good for me as a coach and as a leader of like, I'm working on, I'm balancing it out instead of separating it. But I love how you went through kind of like the rabbit hole of all the different ways that you do it. Cause that's what it comes down to is, right, like, if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to have the energy to take care of others? It's the old put on your mask first before you help others. And it's that same simple idea. And I think that's the part where, and to your point, a lot of times coaches feel they just need to grind through it, grind the fatigue. Like I know a lot of coaches that feel, I'm grinding as if it's like the coolest thing on earth. And it's like, okay, you're grinding, great, but is that good for you? Is that healthy? Are you bringing your best to the people that you're serving by doing that? So, from that standpoint, if you've been in sports culture, for quite some time, right? And you've worked in it and seen how it glorifies grinding through fatigue, how big that is. Was there an experience that you had with yourself or with a client where pushing harder had backfired so badly that it permanently changed how you value now rest and recovery? Was there like a moment where I was like, okay, we got to take this serious?
Yeah. So both on the clinic and in like the athlete realm on those sides of things. So I'll give you the clinic example first. So when I first opened the clinic, I was staying up till like 3 a.m, like working on whether it was content or like marketing strategies and doing all this stuff. And I realized, and I took pride in it, right? I was like, I'm staying up later than you. I'm getting up earlier than you. I'm out working you. And I realized I have all this work, but yet there's nothing to show for it. Right? I was like, could I just not condense this down? Right. And get it done earlier in the day, right? Rather than like wearing it as a badge of honor that I'm staying up late and then just breaking my body down. And so I realized like working hard is great, but if there's nothing to show for it at the end of the day, no one really cares. Right. So that was a big revelation to me. Now on the athlete side of things, like, yeah, I see it all the time because I train a lot of fighters. And so I'm the strength conditioning coach for them, but I also take care of them on the healthcare side of things. And fighters have the most hectic schedules. I mean, I got some of my guys that are training, we have S&C in the morning and then they go to jiu-jitsu like, a couple hours later. And after that, they've got boxing or Muay Thai, like, 2 hours after that. And then they might have MMA, like, 2-hour practice, just grinding it out. And then we got to go do it all over again the next day. And it's not sustainable, but it's funny because then you get into this mental aspect, like this type of training would break anybody. Like, it's amazing that some of these guys go through it and they don't get injured or they never get super sick. And it's like, this is crazy. And it goes back to that central governor theory. I mean, a lot of these guys are coming from, this is all they have, right? This is their way out.
Right.
Right. So it's just such a different mindset. It's a different level. There is no plan B. It's like, I got to make it. And then the body's like, okay, well, I guess I got to do it because the brain's telling me to do so. But like there is drawbacks, especially once weight cut time comes around. And not only are you training 2-3 times a day, but now we're cutting your calories because you got to drop 40 pounds to make weight. That ain't going to fly. Right. And this has happened to a lot of my fighters where something happens and they get super sick during the weight cut, or we need to get IVs or like whatever it is, just because we pushed too hard and we couldn't pull back. So I was like, this is where we need to be methodical. Like, let's add in recovery sessions or let's preemptively do an IV to make sure that we can stay healthy during camp, during the cut or something like that. So it's been trial and error, but we've kind of perfected some things based upon the fighter to keep them healthier longer and realizing sometimes less is more. Right. And the biggest thing for them is, mental aspect for them is huge because obviously, it's you against yourself and you against the other person in the cage, right? Exactly. Somebody's walking out and it better be me. So for them, they think, oh, I just need to do more. I need to do more. I need to do more. I remember one of my guys, he wanted to go and have another hard training session, like 3 days out before the fight. And I go, if you haven't learned this technique by now, you sure as hell aren't going to be able to use it when you're in the ring, in a couple days. Yeah. And at that moment he goes, oh yeah, like it clicks. Right. And I think, and that comes from like the rugby background of like your coach isn't actively like on the sideline, like telling you what to do. Like you make the adjustments at halftime, right? With like most high level sports, you watch a high level boxing coach, they're just asking like their fighter when they come in the corner, like, how you feeling? How you doing? They're like very rarely talking to them, giving them a bunch of advice because that's more cognitive overload. Like the game plan has already been instituted. It's just on you to execute it. If we need to pivot, we'll pivot. But I don't need to continue like hound you about what we need to do because now that's more for you to stress about, more to worry about. If you haven't learned it by now, you're not just going to magically pick it up that night.
Exactly. I think that's what's so fascinating about the work they do, from the visual neurological end is like the importance of building that baseline up, right? Because how that impacts, exact to your point of like, all right, time to compete. Here we are. So when you think about in your view, like what role should visual and neurological training play in an athlete's like in-season maintenance plan, especially when the fatigue and the head impacts, add up over time like that, especially in these like type of battling sports?
Yeah. So, I mean, I use it pretty heavily. I describe it as we have like priming aspects of it, and then like a enduring aspect of it. Like when I go out and I treat it like rehab, right? Like, so we might push extremely hard. Like I push my rehab guys extremely hard to like point of like fatigue, trying to break them, all that. Because I want to make sure they're resilient enough to when they go and play. Right. So we might have days where we push them very, very hard, and we just try and time it up like on certain days, like whether you want to use a high-low model or whatever you want to use, we'll try and time it up on certain days where we have at least like a day or like every week or two where we, have a day where we push it hard and we try and achieve something a little bit more. But the other times it's really just like get in and get out. Right. Just get in and get out, like get it to where you feel, okay, cool, I got something out of it and then I'm done. Like I don't need to gas myself doing that. In the morning, you can hit it on a morning skate if you want to feel like a little bit, good to go. If you want to do it right before you go out on the ice, like we can prime some stuff like that, darting the eyes around, doing a little quick search. It shouldn't take you more than 20 seconds to feel, okay, my eyes, like I'm alert, I'm good, I'm ready to go. Right. Yeah. And so it's just cool stuff like that. Or even we'll implement it in the game. Like you might see this like every once in a while. Oh, I teach all my athletes how to do this. It's like it's a cheat code. So it's called the Oculocardiac reflex. So if you put enough pressure onto your eyeballs, your heart rate and your blood pressure and your breathing will slow down.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. So we'll see that every once in a while. We'll all be like, okay, like go onto the ice, like whatever, it's TV timeout, or like you're on the bench, or you're coming up to a face-off. Like you can literally just put some light pressure against your eyes. But this is also cool because I tell them focus on the black. Because if you press on your eyes, you stimulate the optic nerve, which you would see like a bunch of flashes of light. I'm like, I want you to ignore that. I want you to focus on the black, because if I focus on the black, the muscles of my eyes relax to take tension off the nerve. So now I've taught my eyes to relax into the game, which then give me a buffer to tighten them back up if I need to. Right. So we can zone out, we can get more peripheral vision on what's going on. And at the same time, I drop my heart rate, my blood pressure, and my breathing, so I can bring myself down in that split moment.
I love that. What I love too is you're pointing out that's so important that we forget as athletes sometimes is like less is more. Like it's amazing how some of these things just take 20 seconds, a minute, and just the consistency of doing it, or just being aware of when you need to use it and how much it impacts your nervous system and how beneficial it can be to you is the coolest thing to me, because we're so used to, I remember, okay, stick handling or shooting pucks. You got to shoot 500 pucks a day. You got to stick handle for an hour. Like these ideas until, as I got older and wise and realized, wow, like literally consistency is all that matters. Is like just a few minutes can go a long way. Just shooting 20, 30 pucks every day can go a long way. But to your point now, it's like amazing how these exercises, they're short, sweet, to the point, but the impact is incredible on the nervous system, which I find fascinating, man. Of just getting more information out like that is so important that players realize, wow, like it doesn't take as much time as we've kind of been accustomed to.
Yeah. And it's super interesting because like the more I learn about it, the more I look at it, like if your eyes aren't even functioning to their fullest capability and we put you under stress, like that's just another stressor that your brain has to deal with, because it has to make up for the fact that your eyes can't handle this. So like that's even just a sneaky thing that can bring down your HRV. And you might not even think that it's a big deal because you don't even notice it. You go about your whole life with this, right? And it's crazy. And it's like that clicked with me probably a couple months ago, where I'm looking at people and like we call it like dysautonomia. So you have your autonomic nervous system, like your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. Like one's like your rest and digest, and the other one's fight, flight, right? So go. And they can get out of whack, right? Especially with head injuries. That's where they really get out of whack. But a lot of hockey players get out of whack too. And so this is like a very untouched thing. If you look at a lot of like their blood work and stuff and all these other things, like their vitamin D tends to be very low. Like vitamin D is a pro-hormone, then that links into everything else because you're in an indoor sport. You're not outside a whole bunch. And if you are outside, it's the middle of winter, like because you're on a rink. You're in a cold place, right? So all that stuff makes a massive difference, like even on nervous system function. So like we can look at some of these things and it's like, oh, I have it from a hormonal aspect that my thyroid's low and my vitamin D is not functioning the way that it needs to, which is affecting my testosterone, which affects my recovery. And then, okay, now I've also got the fact that like we're midway through the season, like my legs are feeling heavy physically, I'm beat up. And then now I've got the vision stuff, like my eyes aren't functioning the way that I want them to. And that's another stressor on my brain. And it's like you have all these little hidden things behind the scenes that you might not be able to pick up on because this is just normal for you, right? But it could be optimized.
100%. 100%. And that is the most fascinating part, right? That optimization, right? It's something we'll talk about a lot is, maximizing versus optimizing. And everybody, like we said earlier, everyone's trying to maximize. I got to be great at all of it, as opposed to, well, there's just different parts that when you work them together, you can optimize. And ironically, you'll get the maximization. Like it's like when they're all working together in unison, like any other good team, right? If everyone's on the same page, everyone's thinking the same way, everyone cares about each other, there's all these components that when they come together, we don't have to be the most amazing, talented team. We just have to be the best team that functions holistically together. And I think that's the part that's so hard for people to see of, you can use the team analogy and know, right, that makes sense, but you forget your body works exactly the same way in that context, which is fascinating to think about.
Yeah, it's the unison aspect of it. I think, you highlighted it perfectly there. Like, you don't always need the best athletes. Sometimes you just need the best coach to bring everything together.
Bingo.
And that is such a revelation because you'll even see that. I mean, I see that all the time in high school sports. Like you got some high schools that just have absolute freak athletes, but it's like if the wheels fall off during the season. And then you've got some places where it's like the kids are good, but they're not great.
Right.
But yet they can play an entire season and they dominate. And it's like, why is it? Just they have a good structure, they play within their structure, and they trust their teammates.
Bingo. Right. It's like you trust your body. So much of it, right? That's when you talk about the parasympathetic, so much of the breathing and everything is just to gain trust and I'm safe, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much of that just helps you to understand, okay, now I can go out into the real world and do things because I'm not afraid. I don't know if you've come across the book Driven yet. Unbelievable.
I've heard about it. I haven't read it.
Bro, so good. Like, you're going to read it, but like, as you're reading it, like, oh my God, Dr. Sean Drake turned me on to it. And I'm like, I read it. I'm like, you're just reading it. Oh my God, that's me. That's like, it's crazy.
Awesome.
Definitely put out the list. You'll be shocked. But it talks about exactly that, right? Of like how much that's how the D2 and D4, genetic makeup that we have, we're always like on that high alert as opposed to, can you just get yourself to just boom, get in that parasympathetic and use these modalities. But right, it's the parts of the system that you just, when you understand, that's
super cool. Like, because then it goes back into like polyvagal theory. Like, if you're big on this on the psych aspect of that, because I first read that book like years ago and read some of those papers, and it was interesting, but I was like, I don't know how to apply this. And then I started like working around a clinic, and it just kind of like came naturally, and I was like, oh, if I decrease the threat to this nervous system, like let's say I want someone to flatten their foot to get pronation, but their foot is stuck, it's rigid. Well, if I just put a sock under it, it tricks the brain. It makes them feel safe, like they're touching the ground, and all of a sudden their foot opens up. And now they can leverage their foot. And I'm like, holy shit, that's like polyvagal theory in action.
It's so
like, it's
crazy.
the coolest thing.
It's so cool. It's funny. I got 2 books, audio books ready to go. I'm going on vacation in a couple of weeks. And it's like, oh yeah, polyvagal. I'm like, here we go. Chill on the beach. Just listen. Yeah, we're nerds. That's good. But no, I love that with your story of like, you've clearly evolved, right, as an athlete and, as a coach through the process. And now I'd love to talk about how you're serving others, right, and the kind of legacy that you're building, in and beyond the game. Talk about, you built Inferno performance around the Dante Virgil kind of metaphor, which I love, right? Look and listen to that. And, when did you feel like you were the guide instead of the competitor? When did that kind of hit you?
I think when I realized like I had reached my capability to play, I'm not going any further with this. And I'm playing with guys that have more raw talent than I do, but they just might not have the IQ that I do for certain things. Cause I've been there, I've played it. They're younger, they're coming up, they haven't had the reps yet. And it's like, well, I could just help speed up their progression and tell them like, here's what I saw. Here's how I like found success within this. Here's some patterns I recognize that you might be able to see. Okay, like you do the reps now, you get your feel for it, and then you create your version of that, right? And then we just sped that up along the way, and I go, okay, well, now like this person's way better than I'll ever be, right? But it's cool because it's like you play it, you have a helping hand within that, and I realized like, oh, okay, like I'm pretty good at this, like I can do this, full go now. And so that's where it became a really cool thing for me. And I realized, and that's why, like, going back to Dante's Inferno, I was like, well, this is the perfect metaphor for this. It's like, my guide is like, I don't need to be the Dante. I don't need to be the main character. Like, my job is to be the Virgil. Is my guide. My job is to get people to recognize, like, in regards to Dante, like, their sins. And like, what might their sins be? Is it the fact that like they just might be weak here, or they're lazy in this aspect, or they haven't had the vision training or whatever? So it's like those categories of hell, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
I can recognize them. And so I can guide them through each pathway to ultimately get them to paradise. Like, so like my company slogan company slogan, like on my church is, or on my shirts is like, the pathway to paradise begins in Inferno. Right. Like, you can't hit like, the highest highs without finding the lowest and the lows. And
right.
That's what I've been there. Like, so it's easy to connect with the athletes on that too, because usually, I mean, it's awesome when they come to me when they're healthy, but like, where does that happen? Like, you come to me because you're injured.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like, I understand it sucks. I've been there. I lived like a lot of my career through that. So it also bridges that, gap of trust immediately when they realize like, oh, you had the same injury. How'd you get through it? Oh, you played through injuries, so you know what it's like. And it's like, yeah, like I've done all that stuff.
Exactly. No, and that's why the jumping in the foxhole with them is so massive. I've just haven't seen anything work faster, right? Lead by example, the old lead by example. There's definitely something tribal or innate in us of like, when we see another human being that's like gone through what we've gone through, or they've been a part, or they get it. It's just that instant trust. You can feel it, right? It's like the it factor. I don't need to sit there and you don't have to tell me anything. I can just tell just by your presence and what you're saying, how you feel around me. And yeah, that's one of the things that's always hard with, when people are trying to think their way through, especially in our field. You'll get a lot of psychologists, sports psychologists, where it's theory and they're trying to really, here's all the research. And it's like, yeah, but have you done it? Have you done the thing? Can you really speak from that?
I think that's always the biggest hang up. It's like, whether it's you go take a course, you read a book, or you go talk to somebody, it's like, okay, that's great that they have this whole concept, but this concept has never been applied in actual practice.
Exactly.
Right? Or you talk to somebody and it's like, it works like in practice, but there's no scientific backing to why it works. Right. So the goal is always like, it's just bridging the gap between the two. And it's like, if you can find someone that does that, you're like, holy shit, this is awesome. Right. And there's more and more people that are coming along like that. Because it's like, a lot of athletes are now getting into the academic side of things.
Right, exactly.
And that's the coolest part about it. Like, I've talked to guys, it's like, oh, I just finished up my NFL career, and now I want to get into sports psych, or now I want to get into the biomechanics lab side of things. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, we can actually explain like why it happens. Like, we know how it happens. Like, we can see it, but you've actually been there, you've done it. Like, what do you notice in that time? Like, that's going on.
Exactly. It's that modern day warrior. It's so funny. History always repeats itself. Renaissance are just like, oh, I've got everything, right? I'm going to be strong, or mentally, like, it's just cool to see it coming back around now, where people are realizing like, oh yeah, I got to use my brain too at the same time, and pull it all together with experience and wisdom and knowledge. And let's all put this together, as opposed to, wait, I have all this knowledge. It's like, cool. You got knowledge. Like, awesome. Now what?
It's like the lifelong student. Like, I've met some people that are just absolutely brilliant, and they're just lifelong students. But it's like, but then you ask them, like, you'll see this all the time within research around pain. And it's like, I listened to something the other day, and it was like, well, a lot of people just have low back pain because their lumbar extensors aren't as strong as their lumbar flexors. And it's like, well, I work with powerlifters that can good morning like 405. Right. So it's like, you're going to tell them that their low back extensor isn't very strong. like that sounds awesome in theory. Right?
Oh yeah, they will. They'd be more than happy to.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, this sounds awesome in theory, but like, how many patients like do you treat? How many people do you see like where this is an actual thing? And it's like, well, I don't actually do any of that. And it's like, okay, so you have no idea. Like, that might work like for one or two people, or do this. Like, perfect example, I always give this when I talk about research. During like early on within tendon research, the big thing was isometrics, right? Based off like Rio's work and everything else. Like, if we do these isometrics, we hit them for 30 seconds, like, you're going to get this analgesic effect. Your pain's going to go down. Everything's going to be awesome, right? And I remember I did that. I like the next day in the clinic after I read that paper, I had like 6 tendinopathy cases. I did it on every single one of them. Every single one of them felt like shit. Nobody got better. And I was like, what the hell? Like, the research says that this should work. And then later on, I think there was another paper that came out like the following year, and it actually reported individual data rather than the group data. And there was people that actually got worse from doing isometrics. There were people that stayed the same, and then there was people that got way better. The group that got better at such a high rate that it skews the group data to make it look like an overall positive. So that's why I tell people, I'm like, research is awesome, but you really need to know how to interpret it, because it might not work out in the real world like you think.
Exactly. Well, 100%. And that's always the challenge of, between the two worlds. Like, to your point, another factor I'd love to hear from you is, measuring success, right, in an athlete's journey. We all know the outcome. Now, I'll focus on the outcome, focus on the process and all that. What have you found now? How are you measuring success in an athlete's journey when scoreboard isn't involved? Like, what does that measurement look like for you?
For us, it's how do we define success? I think that's the biggest thing. That's always start with when I say, like, how you define success within this rehab plan. Like, I can put out numbers and, like, let's say, your grip strength gets within 10%, of the other side after shoulder injury. Like, on paper, objectively, like, yeah, we hit this, but are you playing at the level that you want? Are you happy with everything else? Like, so we have to have an operational language. We have to be on the same comms, right? So your definition needs to be the same as my definition, right? And that's the biggest thing. And I think that's the biggest holdup of a lot of people when they're like, all right, how do you, are you successful? And it's like, you talk to some people and, I talked to a businessman who makes millions of dollars, and I just ask him about his business and like, oh yeah, you're super successful. He's like, yeah, but I hate my life because my home life sucks.
Exactly.
Right? For me, like, I would rather have a greater home life than a highly successful business.
Bingo. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, how do we define success? What's our operational definitions? Can we all be on the same page? And then from there, we can build around the plan.
I love that. And that right there, right? It's like, what do you want from the experience? I think as a lot of people are always chasing the how-to guys, and here's how somebody else is doing it. So that must mean that's the same thing for me. And I think that's the part, and like we talked about earlier, right? Of like how, as an evolving athlete, as a high performer, someone else doesn't have your answer. Like, you can't just, no one has your answer. Like, we're all preference-based sandwich creatures. Like, ew, mayo, that's disgusting. Mayo's awesome. Yeah. Let's fight. Like, it's like, it's just no big deal, man. It's like, cool, you love mayo. I don't, like, we're good. But it's amazing how just simple moments like that, which complex in terms of, it's amazing, right? Well, what do you want? Have you thought about that? And I'm amazed at how often, especially adults, never thought about that. Like, what do you really want? And they can't answer it clearly. Yeah. And I think that's the part, right, that is amazing to me in the field of how much we don't teach that. And before we start this season, or before you got going this off season, whatever it is, what do you want out of this? Where do you want to go with it? And that's one of the things that fascinates me with all the work that we do, is how often we don't take even the simplest step. And it's just everybody kind of, trying to fix medicine, right? Let me just fix it. Let me put something on top of it, put some ointment, instead of like, let's get to the root of the issue, which is, what do you want?
Yeah. And I think we've concentrated so heavily on the objective aspect that we've lost the subjective. And that has been my biggest gripe. I want to say that, like, the last couple of years, whether it's like rehab or performance or like psych, like whatever it is, like perfect example is like I talked to someone in the NFL, like we were going over, they have a wireless like motion capture. So like they have cameras all throughout the stadium now. They can pinpoint on a specific athlete. They can strip that athlete down to like their bare bones, look at the kinematics, see how it's moving. And they go, okay, like this person lacks this amount of whatever. They only have X degrees of dorsiflexion in their ankle. They're at a high risk for their like a sprained ankle or a knee injury or whatever it might be. And I'm like, that's awesome. But why is it like that? Don't give me the how, like don't give me the what, give me the why. Like there could be 50 different reasons why that dorsiflexion sucks in that ankle, right? The numbers, I mean, that number's awesome. That's cool that it's, X amount. That doesn't help me though. Right. And you can see that like amongst so many other things, right? Like perfect example is like the groin squeeze test that every hockey team loves to use, right? We got to be within 10%. Well, one, that thing, every guy I talk to, they hate it because it destroys their groin for like an hour. Right? They're like, I feel like shit when I do it. And it's like awesome, the fact that we're collecting this data and I feel terrible while I do it. But then at the same time, it's like, it has to be within 10%. Okay, well, theoretically, if I don't train the healthy side and it gets as weak as the weakest side, they're within 10%. Would that make you happy? You satisfied your 10% rule, right? Right? But that doesn't make any sense. Like the Goodhart's law, like where the test becomes like the measure becomes, or the test becomes the measure, it ceases to be a good measure. All right. And I think that's what we've fallen into on the objective side of things so heavily. It's like we're so focused in on this thing that we've missed the bigger picture.
Bingo.
Right? And that's where we need to get in tap on the subjective side of things. Like, I do give a shit about how you feel, because that is going to influence your performance, right? There is no, scale 1 to 10, how happy are you today? That's awesome. Like, but that doesn't mean shit for me. So like, I want to know your subjective. I just want to talk to you. I want to see how you're feeling. I want to know what home life is like, because that's going to influence the rehab or like whatever we might do. Like, I might have some data that shows like, okay, I'm within 10% on my counter movement jumps, so my nervous system should be ready to fire. But if I just had an argument with my wife and I slept like shit, well, I don't need to push it that day in the clinic. I'd rather just talk to you about like what's going on at home and how can we fix this so that you have a happier life and and then we'll go back into training.
Exactly. That's one of the things that fascinates me the most. And, obviously still see it all the time at the pro level, of where it's like the data. We're just trying to gather more information and all the different ways that we can just get more data. And it's something as simple as, well, if we talk to them, what do they think? Where are they at? Like, how are they perceiving it? What are they seeing? But no, we want to sit and have meetings in a room and talk about what we're perceiving. And we're going to leave out the person that is actually doing the work out there. And we're not going to talk to them and find out. We're just going to come up with the ideas through data.
And we have all this data now, but injury rates are higher than they've ever been. So it's we're collecting all this data, but it's not actionable data. So what am I doing with it? And then this goes back to a super interesting phenomenon called like the Zeno effect. So I want to say Zeno is a Greek philosopher, but he talked about this concept. Like, if you shoot an arrow, right? Yep. And then you like chop it into bits. Say we just draw out the flight path. If I looked at each thing like individually, it wouldn't look like it's moving very far at all. But if I zone out, I go, oh shit, this just covered a whole bunch of distance. Right? Because if you try to track something and you're hyper focused on it, it won't look like it's moving at all. Right? We've all stared at a pot of water while we try to boil it, and it never boiled that fast. The moment I walk away, all of a sudden it's spilling over.
Exactly.
It's your perception of it.
Bingo. It's like watching your kids grow up. You're just like, you can't, you're in it. You're in the jar. You can't read the label. You're like, you can't see. And it's like, oh, your kid is so nice. Like, really? I live with a kid. That's awesome. Well, one of the things I'd love to finish, by exploring the deeper meaning behind your work, right? The why that goes behind, beyond the wins, titles, all the stats, fun stuff. When you think about, when did it click that your work was serving something bigger than the wins and losses? Like, when did it hit you of like, all right, I'm on a bigger mission here?
This is probably like one of the toughest cases I had. So at the last clinic that I worked at, we had VA patients, so all military. And I had this one kid, like, you could tell, like, just wasn't okay when he came back home, right? Like a lot of the soldiers are. And I made it like a point to be there for him, like talk to him about whatever, help out with whatever pain's going on. There's just so much going on, whether like mental, physical, all this stuff. And what sucks with the VA is like you're only granted so many visits within a time period, which makes sense because you also don't want to abuse the system. But like a lot of these guys, I mean, like 6 visits is not going to help something that's been, brewing for this long. You throw in the psychological aspect onto it, it makes it even worse. The fact that they might have PTSD or something else, right? And so like I tried to do all this stuff, helping him along the way, doing all these things. Well, he was diagnosed with bipolarism and had a manic episode, right? And chalk that on top of the fact he had PTSD, and it was just the perfect storm. So I get a phone call one day at the office, and it's him, and it was, hey, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for me. Like, you're truly my brother's keeper. And then at that moment, like, started sounding like, couldn't make out what he was saying, kind of like having like a breakdown on something. And then I go, oh shit, like he might be trying to take his life. And so I called the VA and I called the psych nurse that was on call for that. And they go, well, they're out. Can you just we can take a message? And I go, no. This isn't like I'm just going to wait thing. I was like, we have to address this. And they said, well, if it's a really problem, just call the police. So we called the police, and sure enough, like this kid had taken his life. All right. And he was younger than I was at the time. And I was pretty young in the clinic as well. And I think that was one of the shittiest things to know that like I did have an impact. Like I made the effort to listen to him. Like I did all these things, like, and I still couldn't help him to how I wanted to. Right. Because the end result was not what we wanted it to be. Right. And I think that was one of the hardest things. I realized like, I don't ever want that to happen. So like with my new clinic, like I made sure that like I could take as much time as I needed. I didn't need to feel rushed like I was in like an insurance-based practice. Like I wanted to make sure that I could hear people out. If I ran late on an appointment, so be it. It's because I gave a shit. And I wanted to make sure like that never happens again. That was probably my biggest why, is just because like I cared so much. I got so invested in this person. And a lot of time within healthcare, like they teach you to almost like detach from the outcome. Right?
Yeah.
Detach from the person, because that way you don't feel like shit if it doesn't go your way.
Bingo,
right?
exactly. Yep.
But some of the best people I've ever met give a shit.
Exactly.
You have to. You have to give a shit.
Yep.
Like I care so heavily about that stuff. It's like I don't want to, get that phone call again from somebody. Right. And know that like I didn't do enough at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. What a tragic story, tough one. Sorry to hear it, but that's
sorry to bring the vibes down.
No, not at all. I mean, that's the point, right? Of like the evolution of those are the moments. Like we need the hard stuff. That's what really shifts us. And finishing off, right? When you think of yourself as an evolving athlete and you look back at yourself at your younger years, right? And you look at how you came up and the thought process you had then versus now, what would be the advice you'd give your younger self that, with the way the world has changed, obviously there's a lot of different things from the time we grew up to the way it is now. But if you look back and you were like, hey, okay, let me give you some wisdom. I know you. I know how you're going to be. I know how you're going to act. What would be that wisdom you'd share to help elevate or at least expedite a little bit of that maturity when you look back as an evolving athlete and go, as you move forward, if you understood this will really help you down the line and you can even maximize life even more by evolving this way?
Like I would say for the biggest thing, like play for yourself, like not in the selfish kind of standpoint, but like play because it makes you happy and it's because you actually want to do that thing. And then be motivated by success, not by avoiding failure. I think that's a hard thing for like high pressure systems, like where you're just, I want to win for somebody else. I don't want to let somebody down, or I don't want to lose or something like that. It's like win because you actually like are invested in the process and want to be that way. And then that takes so much stress off your shoulders within what you're doing.
Gold right there. Gold. We always talk about the cognitive trade-off. So you think about one thing and not thinking of the other.
Yeah.
And that's it. Just dial on the success piece. Like fair is fair, but just boom, dial in.
Yeah.
I love it, brother. Well, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking us inside, not just that technical side of what you do, but also the human journey behind it. I know that my audience, especially the hockey players out there and the athletes out there and the coaches and leadership are going to, take a lot from this and, we'll make sure to link your work so people can learn more and connect with you. If they wanted to, follow you and find you and all that stuff, what would be the best way for them to be able to do that?
Probably through Instagram. Like I'm really terrible about doing content. I post a lot of stupid shit on my stories. So if you want a good laugh, you can follow some of that stuff. But I'm pretty open to like, people shoot me messages on that stuff all the time. So like I'm pretty good about responding to some of that stuff. I let like people can come and shadow like whenever. I'm an open book on everything I do. So if you have questions, you got a phone call about something, like I'm a phone call away. I'm always happy to to share stuff and to help bring each other up. Like no one's competing against each other. At the end of the day, we're just trying to help people. So like, why would I keep that information from somebody else if they could be helped? So yeah, like whether it's like you just call up the business phone number or like shoot me an email through like the website or whatever it might be. I think it's inferno-pr.com, like any of that stuff. Or I think for my Instagram, it's Dylan_Seeley DC. So any one of those, like I'm pretty responsive about all that stuff.
Beauty, lot, unreal. And so, again, thank you so much for, jumping on and joining us. It's always fun, man. And Gav will be interesting to catch up with him, man. We'll be getting after it. And then for everyone tuning in, right, if you enjoy the episode, make sure you subscribe to Evolving Athletes podcast with Coach Vinny Malts so you don't miss future conversations. And remember, keep evolving on and off the field.